Episode 9, From Hustle to Strategy. Hustle kept me alive, but strategy gave me a way out. For years, I knew how to hustle. I knew how to chase a gig, pitch myself, take a meeting, shoot a project, edit a video, coach an actor, make something out of almost nothing. But homelessness taught me something painful. Hustle without strategy can still leave you sleeping in a car. Last episode, I talked about Temple City, the basement, the unexpected door, the responsibility, and the quiet place where I started breathing again. But having a place to sleep was not the same thing as having a future. I still had to build a way out. Problem with random hustle, I was spinning spinning my wheels, right? Walking Hollywood Boulevard, talking to business owners, trying to sell photography or online marketing. I could build a website for them. I could build like if they were a restaurant, I could build the order form, the means for people to order the whatever items they wanted. I talked to some of the tour buses along Hollywood Boulevard. Some of them are cash only, and I was able to like set up a website that people could access right there on their phone when they're in line to purchase their ticket, and they could pay for it online with their phone. And so the tour buses could accept uh, payment other than cash. Um, I was just trying to come up with anything digital marketing, anything I could do as an independent that, I knew a business wasn't like once the job's done, it's done for the most part. I'm not there as a long-term employee. I'm just an independent. And then there were some bigger deals that I almost or where I almost got deals with the pizza shop, the dispensary, and the kitchen remodeling company. Actually, with the pizza shop, they actually paid me like a $2,000 down payment, but then they didn't go through with the whole campaign. But I actually got some money from them, but I didn't. I chose not to get a hotel because I didn't know when I was going to see more money. So until I had more cash flow, I just kind of kept that $2,000 to take care of my expendables, food, different things. And these businesses just kept telling me these three different businesses. These were all three very significant deals. One of them I was going to do. We were trying to create. We wanted the pizza shop to be like the Pink's Hot Dogs of pizza shops in LA. And if you know anything about Pink's Hot Dogs, it's a hot dog restaurant on La Brea that's just one of a kind, and it's the best hot dogs possibly in the country. I mean, they're fabulous. I love Pink's. There's a few places like that. Johnny's Pastrami was an excellent place. They had two locations actually, one in like North Hollywood area and one in like South, right off Crenshaw, essentially. But in any case, we wanted this pizza shop to have that kind of brand recognition. And so I was gonna get them ad space in one of the magazines I was working with. I think it was Hollywood. It doesn't even matter which one it was. But we were we were holding we were gonna hold a casting, and we were gonna do some a series of print ads that we would put in all the magazines and create posters and market the pizza shop. The dispensary wanted just like they wanted models that were 420 friendly, obviously, to make like paid appearances there. So I managed a few models, um, probably about 12, 12. I don't remember exactly, not at least 15 at one point. Um, but I managed some girls, and so some of them would have been amicable to that, and it's just like having an author w- do like a book signing at a bookstore. And so the idea was to have a model, invite her following out. They're playing music, maybe letting them sample the product, and it's just it was a way to bring people into their dispensary, because there's just so many dispensaries out there. The kitchen and remodeling company, that was a pretty big deal. That was probably the largest deal because they wanted me. The idea was that we would actually shoot some TV commercials, and I had relationships with I can't remember the cable provider. I want to say Spectrum, but I don't remember for sure. Where I could sell the airtime. I could sell the airtime, and so like I had that type of arrangement with them. So I was gonna produce the commercial and do the media buy for them. And so that would have been a really nice lucrative deal for me. But all three of these deals kept becoming, you know, next week, and hearing next week again, and next week turns into next week, and then the next week turned into the next week, and the next week turned into next month, and the next month turned into the next month. It just kept going and going and going while waiting for one deal to finally come through. So the lesson there is that a possible deal is not a plan. You could be waiting for that possible deal forever. And I had to get fed up with that to start making other moves, having other thoughts. Because it wasn't enough to have the leads, right? I had these leads, but I didn't have the leverage. I was not in control, once again, of the outcome, um, or the timing. I wasn't in full control of that. So one night, I'm in my car, just having a hard time sleeping, and I'm just staring out at the black sky through my windshield, and I'm just thinking and thinking, and I'm realizing I have this life insurance license, which is your basic level financial services license. You're able to help people uh, get whole life insurance, term life policies, universal life policies. You're able to work with them, get them fixed income annuities. You were definitely you're definitely in the financial world, and I hadn't really done anything with it. I think maybe I had sold one or two policies to, I know one friend got a policy at one point, but I really hadn't done my due diligence with it. I got the license, and I just wasn't, I was just still so occupied with the entertainment business and being on the show and doing the podcast. And I just hadn't applied myself to the life insurance industry besides just getting the license. So I'm sitting in my car, staring into the night and realizing that I have this insurance license that it's just going around and round and round in my mind. And the thought came to me, I don't need any inventory. I don't need Hollywood to reopen. And I don't need someone to hand me a job. All I needed was to connect with people who needed the product or service I was providing. So I stopped asking who will hire me, and I started asking, what can I build that people can find? And that got me going down this rabbit hole of, well, I already understand YouTube SEO, but I'm really not in a position to create videos of myself talking about anything. I didn't, I, no, that just wasn't, that wasn't an option in my mind. But web SEO, while it is much more complicated, much more complex, much more layered, and can take much more time. I mean, it was different. You know, I had to learn how websites ranked, how the search engines made the decisions on ranking websites against one another, how search intent worked, how people find solutions online, and how to turn that knowledge into visibility. So I was, at the time, gyms were not open. Like usually where a gym might be open till 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Equinox, 24 Fitness was open all 24 hours, right? But until COVID, and Equinox was open till like midnight or something like that. But because of COVID, it was closing at like 9 p.m. So I would get over there by about 6, 7, and I would use the Wi-Fi. I would sit there and uh, maybe buy a little whatever were selling. They had a little cafe. I'd get a little something to drink, and I used the Wi-Fi. It became my little classroom. Same place I was going for showers and water became the classroom. So I spent a lot of time in Equinox. When I first got that membership, I was like $300. That's what I was thinking, $300 a month. But in retrospect, I mean, I must have used every penny of that. It was worth it at the end of the day in my situation. 'Cause the gym wasn't just keeping me clean; it was helping me learn my way out of my situation. It was the beginning of it. So let me break down why strategy beats, I don't know, just I'll call it desperation, just throwing darts at the board. Um, it's a mindset shift, right? Hustle says, let me find somebody who will pay me today. But strategy says, let me build something that can keep producing opportunities tomorrow. And that's a different mindset. So I had to go from chasing one-off gigs to building an online engine. And that was no easy feat. That was I up from the beginning, up front, I was well aware that I was climbing an uphill battle of which the likelihood of success was not very high, not in my favor. It was a lot of it was a lot of learning and persistence, uh, because I didn't even though I knew YouTube SEO, I wouldn't say I mean, there's some things, there's a small probably 10-20%, 10 to 20% of it actually translates and carries over to website SEO, but YouTube SEO is a lot less to it. It's not as complicated as website SEO. So while the old me chased rooms, the new me had to learn how to build doors. So while I was living in Temple City with Heidi, Young Princess, and Nai, um, while I was staying there, helping with responsibilities and rebuilding my own daily structure, the seeds from my life insurance website started growing uh, before I even recognized it. The business started moving and taking off. I had, I knew, here's the thing I knew about SEO. I knew that insurance, any type of insurance, would have to be banking, anything in the financial world, all that has got to be the keywords, the search engine ranking will be very hard to outrank the sites ranking at the top on the first page of Google, for example, the top 10, the top 5, the top 3. I knew it would be super, super competitive because you're competing against websites like NerdWallet, Investopedia. Um, these sites have hundreds of pages and tons of information. So the likelihood of Google letting my brand new site on IULs, Index Universal Life Policies, outrank these types of sites was gonna be next to impossible, and it would take possibly years for me to accomplish this. But I had one little twist. One thought came to me while I was laying in bed one time. I had been recruited into my life insurance firm I was with. My upline, let's call him Jose. Jose was bilingual, okay, and English and Spanish, and so his sister was like our admin. His wife, almost everybody was bilingual. They spoke Spanish as well as English. And as he built out his team, he often had people from, his church or, wherever they were from. But the vast majority, I'd say at least 50% of them were bilingual. Um, of course, I wasn't, right? I wasn't. I mean, I could speak some Spanish, but not at the level necessary to talk financial business. But I just had this hunch. I had this idea that, the competition in English to outrank other websites in English is going to be so high. This could take forever if I could do it at all. So I got this bright idea that I'm going to build out a lot of sites in Spanish. And I'm going to try to rank those at the top because these American companies, they're not going to have their eye on the Spanish market like that. And so I called Jose And I said, listen, if I do this, I'm going to need help. I'm going to need the agents behind me that can close the deals, that can actually do the communicating. I mean, I can handle anything in writing. I was, I had some translation softwares, and you can even use Google to translate some stuff. But largely, I was going to need people that could be on the phone with serious, seriously interested potential clients, and could speak to them in Spanish with confidence and authority. I wasn't gonna be able to do that. He said, "I got you." And that was enough. That was enough for me to move forward with this idea. And so that's what I did. And sure enough, within about, I don't even think it was 2 months, all of a sudden, my website was ranking on these Spanish terms. I was ranking on some very high volume search terms that were highly classified. Like, for a client to even ask about an IUL. See, when you go to Google or Yahoo, wherever you go, Bing, um, for you, whatever you type into that search bar, you probably know a little something about. Like, you're not gonna just randomly type Adidas if you have no idea what an Adidas is. So I knew that I wanted to find people that had some sort of exposure to what IUL accounts are, what, index universal life insurance is. And that right there would help me find very qualified leads already. Maybe they just needed a few questions answered. And so I focused my whole business on index universal life insurance, which is great. I mean, I don't want to get off into the details without getting into the details of the policies. They're designed to be a means to provide a tax-free retirement savings. Okay. And they're wonderful policies. Feel free to go to my website, iulaccount.com, to learn more about them if you'd like. But the point what I'm getting at is I was getting these highly qualified leads in Spanish. They started calling me. Well, this is what happened. I started getting phone calls from all these random numbers. For like 2 or 3 weeks. I would pick up the phone, answer the phone, and no one would say anything. I'd say hello, and and there'd be just blank crickets on the other end. And then I was starting to get angry about it. I'm like, what spamming company is calling my phone about nonsense? And so one day, me and Heidi and young princess were at the park, and someone called, and I'm like, I had some attitude. I'm like, hello, hello. And all of a sudden, the voice on the other end says, uh, do you speak a Spanish? And I was like, oh my goodness. Right then, it dawned on me. For 2 or 3 weeks, I had been receiving 1, 2, 3 calls a day where I answered the phone in English, and people were hanging up because they knew there would be no point. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I've been missing so many calls. So I told him, I said, um, si mi amigo hablas español. I was telling him I have a friend that speaks Spanish. Just give me a minute and I'll get him on the phone. And so I immediately called Jose on a three-way call. and boom, we closed this guy. We got our first our proof of concept, and of course, I split the commission with Jose, but I realized right away, all right, I'm gonna have to get an 800 number, and I'm gonna program it to speak in English and to direct people in Spanish. And I'm gonna everybody that calls in Spanish is gonna get automatically routed to Jose's cell phone. Anybody that calls in English, which wasn't many, my site at most I was getting 10% English calls once I started getting them, and 90% Spanish calls. So all of a sudden, once I realized that, my business took off. And I started getting I mean, it was like there would be days anywhere from 4 to 10 appointments would be set. Appointments set where they had reached out to me and set an appointment. I started building I had a chat box, excuse me, I built a chat box on my site that, did a good job of asking all the right questions to understand, like, what's the person's budget? What do they think they're trying to achieve? I really had a very good qualifier for the clients that were calling already. So I was getting appointments through people calling the 800 number, through them booking a scheduling appointment online with me, and through, there would be just random calls that came in. So the days would be full of opportunities to help people with index universal life policies. And I mean, it just got to the point, it was like, I remember telling Jose once, it's like, or maybe he told me, I don't know. One of us said something, it's just like manna raining down from the sky, it was crazy. And it was like overnight, um, well, relatively speaking. It was a slow buildup, but once the pot started boiling, that thing started boiling over. I remember one day we started getting calls at like 7 a.m. and they just went on all day. I mean, I think we got like 25 calls. And this is aside from the appointments we had. So at that point, I told Jose, I'm gonna have to get some more agents. Like I'm gonna have to like route these calls to more people. And so that's what we did. I think I had, let's see, one, two, three, four, I don't remember, at least 5. I had at least 5 or 6 Spanish agents that, I could I had set up on, to receive forwarded leads from my 800 number. And I also it was like, it got to the point where, like, let's say I called somebody for an appointment. They had an appointment and I called them, or, somehow I had to reach out to them. If they didn't answer, I didn't even have the time to follow up with them. I had 2 other guys, in fact, my cousin was one of them, the cousin that I would speak to, while I was in the car. He got his license. Once he saw what was going on, he was like, "Yeah, man, you can shoot, whatever leads you wanna throw my way." And so what I did was I had him and another Spanish translator, it was a friend of his, they would follow up on people on leads that missed their appointment with me. So they had days of making a lot of calls. And then shoot, let me think. There's still some people that are just never pick up the phone. I don't know about what it is about this era, this time period we're in, but there's people, you have a phone and all they wanna do is text all the time, and I will not have a full conversation through text, especially about this kind of business. I mean, I'm just not gonna go through, an insurance presentation through text message. Forget it, especially in, like a second language for me. So, as much as I would, I would have short conversations and set up appointments. That's one thing, but to full out explain this through text message, not happening, right? So I had three guys that their thing was to create videos. I showed them, I had software where I would create like videos with animation, or like 3D avatar people, and they would present, that I use this like computer voice, or I would try to use as human a voice as possible, but I could do the presentations in Spanish without me speaking. And so I had three guys that would make these videos as well, and it got to the point I didn't have to make the videos. Um, they would make videos, and I would show them, they were all pretty much templates. I would say, "Okay, look, mm, this is the portion that explains how the IUL works, and this is the portion we gotta customize, put their numbers in, put their name here, put their age here, put their, whether they're smoker or not smoker, or whatever the case is. Um, we got these are the parts we have to customize." And I would do up all the illustrations. So I would work out all the what the policy would look like, how much the coverage was for, um how much cash value they would end up creating over 20, 30 years, however much they were, however long they anticipated working. And I would do all that part so they didn't have to worry about that. They just had to plug and play, paint by numbers, right? And it was still a job though. You didn't want to make any mistakes. We didn't have any of those, fortunately. And then we'd email these videos, these YouTube videos. We'd make private unlisted videos, and we email that to people. And so these are people that never got on the phone, never responded, flaked out on their meeting or whatever, but they opened the email or maybe opened the text message with a link, and then they watched it. And sure enough, we closed some deals from that too. So, like, I just had it was this whole little system, and no one in the world would believe, like, the thought of some people told me how crazy it sounded that, I was in fact, my first year in this firm, the agency has, like, between 3 and 4,000 agents at that time. I was number 7 in IUL production in my very first year. Number 7, and I didn't had I started in January, I think I started in April or May or something like that, but had I been executing this since January, I probably would have been top 3 for sure, if not number 1. Um, but yeah, it was, I mean, I am a systems guy anyway, and I loved watching this machine work. I loved it. I'm sorry if I bored any of you guys with the details of it, but for me, it was quite fascinating, and it used a lot of the same skills that I was already using. I mean, we're talking about editing video, we're talking about communicating, like, just like I'm directing talent, very specific, detailed, blocking and instructions and dialogue delivery. I'm doing that with the agents to a certain extent, because I'm like writing out, this is the script. I know what people are telling you. I know, forget all that. We're not going to do it that way. We're not going to do it that way. We're going to do it. Follow me on this. I'll give you two different illustrations. One of them will be the way the client thinks they want it. One of them will be the way I'm pretty sure they're going to choose after they watch, um, after they hear your presentation. Um, and man, it was automatic, automatic. So the video editing, selling myself to the clients, having to make create connection with them in a very short time, grab their attention and earn their trust and get their commitment and enough to get them to move forward. And then I had the added challenge of having to talk this I had to do this through other people's mouths, and I had to get them on board, you know. It was a challenge, but it was a fun challenge. It was a very ambitious challenge. And I really, 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 I took a big risk with that. That was I mean, on some levels, I guess on some levels, I took a big risk with that, right? That it could have been a big waste of time. It could have just worked out horribly. But at the same time, at the point I was at, it's kind of like, I don't got anything to lose anyway. So I figured the least I could do was just give it a try. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But to not even try, I could be missing the boat. But turns out the gamble paid off. So the lesson here is that hard work matters, but hard work without a system can keep you exhausted. Strategy is when your effort finally has somewhere to go. And that's really what my whole Spanish marketing campaign came down to. It was the perfect synergy, the perfect synthesis of hard work and, I don't want to say flawless strategy, but diligent strategy or directed strategy. It was the perfect synthesis of that. And I mean, it just changed everything about my business. I heard Denzel Washington say something, and I'm trying to remember the quote exactly, but it was something to the effect of, "Don't confuse motion with progress." Don't I think it was that, yeah. Don't confuse motion with progress, because you can do a lot of motion. You could be, in the gym running on a treadmill, but you're really not getting anywhere. You're just running and running on a treadmill. Now, that's no excuse for some of you guys listening right now. If you look, if you need to get some exercise in the context of getting exercise, you go ahead and run on that treadmill. But I think what's important about that is just the analogy of you can be running, expending a lot of energy and hard work while figuratively going nowhere, and you're just running in the same place. And that's really what that speaks to. So, next episode, I'll talk about how the comeback became the content and why the lowest chapter of my life became the message I'm sharing now. So, the main message here in episode 9 is hustle keeps you moving, but strategy gives that movement direction. In my case, I didn't need to stop being a hustler, but I needed to become a builder. And that made all the difference. Thank you very much.